Okay, we are recording, and then I'm going to pull up our, okay. All right, guys, welcome back, Guardians, to the Idaho Vanguard podcast as part of Idaho 5051 with your host, Lotus.
Hi.
Sonia.
Hello.
And I'm Pine. We've had a couple of busy weeks that have made it hard for us to get here to film, and one botched recording with new equipment. We are back with a bigger behind-the-scenes crew of journalists and truth tellers. We are broadcasting from wherever you get your podcast with Gil Arouxet.
Arouxet.
I will get it. It's French. Representative of the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters, to talk about union power, union work, and how local scandals are undercutting the protections of workers and consumers and taxpayers as well. We are once again bringing you journalism against tyranny, talking all things Idaho and national politics, helping break down the headlines and bylines so you can understand what is happening in our communities, our state, and our country without panic or overwhelm. Today's episode is sponsored by Goth with Glitter, providing us a beautiful space to record and a place for misfits to gather. Thank you, guys. All right, Gil, how about we get a little bit of background on you? How did you get involved with union, and what is your position with the union?
My position is I'm the lead representative for the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. We represent roughly 100,000 members in 12 states, and I cover southern Idaho from essentially the Oregon border over to the Montana-Wyoming border. And if you take the Oregon-Washington border and cut it off straight a 180-degree line, then northern Idaho is represented by Washington. Not to say we don't represent every member in those 12 states, but our jurisdiction lies in southern Idaho. The states we cover in the western states are Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California, right? So, and Colorado and Utah, sorry. And the way I got in the union is I moved here 18 years ago. I've always been in construction. My dad was a general contractor. I was born and raised to it. I knew I was going to be a carpenter probably from the moment I was born. I've been a kinesthetic learner my whole life. I knew I liked construction. I moved over here and I started working non-union. And I was working on a big project, and I was on the third floor of a St. Alphonsus Central Tower addition off of Curtis, and I remember an organizer coming on the job. And funny story is, while I was working, all the workers started panicking, and they were approaching, walking around, and so what's going on? And they go, oh, there's a carpenters union organizer on the job. Don't talk to him. And I was always naturally curious as a kid, and still am, right? And I'm just like, why? And they couldn't give me a reason why, other than their foreman told them not to, right? And like, that's not a legitimate reason to not speak to another human being, right? So I said, hey, well, if this organizer comes up to him, I'm gonna ask him all the questions, right? And sure enough, I was fortunate to get to speak to him. He asked me questions, basic questions that organizers generally ask is, hey, introduce themselves, get to know who you are, how long you've been with the company, how much you make, which I openly shared. Said, hey man, you're significantly getting paid below what the area standard of carpenters are. And I go, what is that? He said, well, the union has a standard we call wages and benefits, right? So it's not just your wage, which I was a young guy, right? I was 25. I thought I was Superman, and only look at the wage that you get on your pay stub. But what he did there that day is he planted a seed, right? And I got his card, didn't reach out to him, but he did say, hey, medical is, I know you're young and you think you're Superman, but you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
Right?
Eventually. Especially in a physical job.
100%. And I mean, it's what I see today as a rep, and this is why this story resonates so much, and that's why I'm a representative today. I'm very passionate about it, is because being young and thinking that I'm Superman, nothing's ever gonna happen to me. I would work out before I'd go in and drywall all day, and I just thought, hey, I'm steel, right?
Yeah.
And not too long before, after that, about 6 months later, I experienced something on the project where I felt something tear There was a sheet of drywall that fell. I tried to reach out and grab it, and I think because of the nature of the position I was in, I put a lot of strain on my abdomen, so it tore a hole. It's unfortunate I didn't report it, and so I reported it not until later. As I don't know if you guys are familiar with how hernias work, but they don't go away.
No.
Right? They only get bigger. Right?
Yeah.
And because of my lack of reporting it, the contractor later down the line essentially said to me, I said, hey, I think this happened on the job. And they said, well, you're an avid lifter. I was, pretty fit at the time. And they said, we think that, I said, I think I got a hernia, right? Like I could feel like what I think, I'm not a medical professional, but intestines popping out. They said, hey, I think you just got that working out. I got let go. I had to pay Cobra, and then I had to pay a very, very expensive hospital bill to get this surgery done. That's where the seed took place. And I said, oh man, what am I doing? Right? And I signed up for the Carpenters Union, and been a representative for 9 years, and I've been a carpenter in the Carpenters Union for about 13 years, and love it. Never would, I'm happy with my choice, and I wish I would have done it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
A lot earlier, because it wouldn't have happened.
Well, I mean, we're all Superman, right? Until we're not. Until we're not. And then, so how old is the Carpenters Union that you are with, that you're representing?
The Carpenters Union has been around since 1881.
Oh, wow. So you guys aren't new.
Yeah.
By any means.
Fun facts, a lot of people don't realize our founder, Peter J. McGuire, is the founder of the Carpenters Union. He is also the founder of the American Federation for Labor. So he's also the founder of the AFL-CIO.
Wow.
So we have a long history in organizing, right? We always say, hey, I think Jesus Christ was an organizer, and he was
also a carpenter.
He was a
He
carpenter.
was also a
Right? I think innately, it's probably in our blood.
Yeah.
To want to organize and better the conditions for all carpenters, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been around for a long time. We know what we're doing in the industry, and the messaging has never changed. It's unfortunate that in 1881, when we started, it was because the conditions were extremely bad, right?
Yeah.
And that's generally what triggers extreme organizing movements, right? And in those times, if you were a father, you were more than likely taking your 8 and 12-year-old into a factory and working 16-hour days with no regulations, right? You'd be working and there'd be all kinds of dust and, all kinds of debris in the air, no masks, people weren't living very long, so people got tired of having and they were forced to work that much, right? Because they weren't making enough money to be able to provide and put food on the table.
Yeah.
There are no 40-hour work weeks.
No.
And children have small hands, great for large machinery.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, that was kind of the whole kickoff with the unions, right? Was this idea that human labor was being exploited, that we had child labor.
Yep.
And they would pay the kids even less, to do the jobs of full-grown adults.
Jobs that were extremely dangerous.
Yeah,
in
they were
comparison
often
to most
quite
of the adult
dangerous.
jobs.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the kickoff, right? That was why
Yeah.
unions formed. And then, of course, some of the things that we can thank unions for are weekends,
Yep.
overtime, PTO, benefits, and having this ability to, like, all of the things we sort of take for granted as a labor force are the direct result from
Yes.
union and union labor organizers.
100%. I think labor history is extremely interesting.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Unfortunately, I think the average American doesn't understand where these rights came from.
I don't think they do.
Oh, no. No.
And I question people a lot of times when they come in, newer members that come in from the non-union sector, and we make it very clear. It's like, especially Labor Day, that's our holiday.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
So
day
you don't work.
Right. And it's mainly, I think it was created to acknowledge what labor has done for Americans and for everybody, right? I always put this thought out there for workers that don't understand labor unions, and sometimes the ones that get upset that we engage in politics, is there's a need for it. I mean,
Yeah.
Ideally in a perfect world, in a utopia, which doesn't exist, we would like corporations and business owners to ethically, do the right thing, but because they don't, that's where unions come into play and have fought for workers, because these corporations didn't ethically just have an epiphany one morning and say, you know what, we're gonna go lobby Congress and we're gonna go do an 8-hour work week. And you know what, there needs to be FMLA.
Yeah.
You know what, there needs to be overtime laws, right? And we need to create OSHA, right? We need to create a sub-branch of government that protects workers.
Yeah, so
Before they die.
Before they die, right?
Yeah.
well, and yeah, like the factory fire in the late 1800s,
Oh,
where
the sugar coat?
yeah, where it was, I think it was in New York, right, where they barricaded the workers in so that they couldn't even leave
Yeah.
the literal sweatshop conditions, and then it caught fire and they basically,
That
dozens of
caused,
people
I
died.
believe, the New York tailors general strike in like 1780 something, if I
It was
remember
18, I
correctly.
think, yeah, it was the 1800s, because in the 1780s we were as a country still.
No, there was a general strike in the 1700s
Oh, wow,
that
that's so
started
cool.
with the New York tailors. I
It's-
looked this up yesterday. That's
yeah.
why.
It's very rare that I get caught out on history.
I'll show you. I'll find the thing for you later.
But yeah, so I mean, when we're talking about like you're organizing with the union, you're basically that representative now, right? Who
Yes.
comes into job sites and tells people like, hey, you could have it so much better.
Right.
Better wages, better hours, and better protections in terms of should you get hurt or should the job site conditions, be extraordinarily unfair or even cruel.
Right.
Like, yes, you do need a 15-minute break here and there, and you do need the option to get water.
Like what happened with your literal story, right? You were injured on the job and kind of got forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not
And I had no one to call. I think most importantly, what kind of clicked in my mind is, you go in a human resource department for a company, and at the end of the day, they're out there to protect the company.
Right.
I'm not trying to badmouth that.
No, that's their
Their
job.
job.
That's their
title,
job.
but that's
job
their
is-
job. Their job is to legally protect the company from liabilities. Let's be
They're one
honest.
step below the lawyers, basically.
Yes, 100%. And at the end of the day, I didn't have someone I could call to say, hey, this happened, right? And guide me, the very least, right?
You provide, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a lot of times what labor, I had an epiphany in that moment. I said, I'm just viewed as just almost a cash register, cha-ching.
Yeah.
I made this company a lot of money, and at the end of the day, when it came down to the human aspect, right, of me and caring for me, it didn't matter, right? Because you're just gonna get thrown in the trash, and we're gonna get someone else, right?
Yeah, some
So the
other 25-year-old.
Right. The value was like, well, we don't see you as a value anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like
You're not an asset.
You're not an asset. You're hurt, right? You can't produce for us now, and it's like, well, wait, I got hurt on your job, so that clicked for me, right? And it made me kind of say, hey, maybe I ought to go in the union hall and talk to them, and I was ready to go.
Yeah.
So, could you explain to us a little bit about what your union stands for and the purpose of it within actual active construction sites
Sure.
and what benefit it has for you?
So, without saying a long-winded, mission statement that we have, we'd like to keep it simple in the Carpenter union. We have 3 words that we live and die by. It's jobs, wages, and benefits, right? We represent carpenters, right? So if we could provide good jobs that we can go after to create for our members, right, with good benefits, right, and a livable wage, and that you can actually be middle class on, we, generally speaking, if we can do that and focus on that and organizing and representation, then it elevates the standards, right? It's the rising tide raises all
Yeah,
boats, right?
exactly.
So, and we keep that messaging very simple because I think it can resonate with everyone, right? We use other terms, but at the end of the day, when you focus on that and you give a person a good job, right, with really good wages and benefits, then I think it also transcends a lot of like the socioeconomic issues in life, right? Like that come with, if you don't have a good job, what happens, right? You may go home and your spouse is like, you're not asking your employer for a raise, what's going on? You've been getting undervalued, underpaid, and then next thing you know, that guy's stressed, he starts drinking, right? There's all these variables I think that can be alleviated. So we keep our messaging simple because it can resonate with people, right? Most people that are working, like, they don't look at all the nuances of everything else, so we want to keep it simple, right? So when we're out there, our messaging is we're out here to police the industry and elevate the standards for all. Because when people have all these things, you build community wealth, which
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if we want to talk politics, this should resonate with both parties, right? If you're conservative, our members, when they go to the doctor, they look to their union contractor and their union. They're not leeching off government, right? So when we talk about creating small government, unions are literally the direct cure to to saying, hey, we want small government. Well, you should actually promote unions, right? Because the union members, they get a livable wage. They're not going to be on food stamps, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that we oppose that, right? It's just unfortunate that some people are such low earners that they need that.
Yeah.
We got a solution, right? Like,
Yeah.
here you go.
When you think about Walmart
Yep.
taking in 25% of food stamp money at all times, while they're the largest entity with the most employees on food stamps,
Yeah.
that's not an accident.
Right. And the taxpayers
yeah.
end up paying for all that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but that's the way we educate workforce. Naturally, I don't think it's natural for people, especially in the construction industry, to think of all these, the picture that I'm painting, right? Like, oh, I could potentially down the line, have so much stress and anxiety and mental health that, I'm going to do something stupid because I don't earn enough money, or I go to the doctor and I can't pay the bill, right? I don't think that's something natural that construction workers think about, which is asinine to me, right?
Yeah.
Because they go to work on these construction sites that are dangerous. Many construction workers die, and a lot of times they're just viewed as a paycheck, right? So they have $3,000 deductibles for their medical plans, if they have deductibles.
If they have a medical plan.
If they have one, or worst cases, we've seen misclassification of workers and as independent contractors getting paid essentially cash with no protections on the job, right? And that to me is like, oh my God, like that should be something that not only they should be concerned about, being treated like this, but also like the communities, because we end up footing the bill when one of these workers gets hurt. Generally speaking, what we see is they get fired.
Yeah.
And then they don't know workers' comp law. They don't know that because they were misclassified, they can go to the general contractor and they are liable for taking care of them. But what do? They go home, let's say they fell off a 6-foot ladder. Fortunately, they just landed on their shoulder. They may have a really bad sprain or whatever. They start, put some Bendione, pop some ibuprofen, and take some Red Bull, some Advil, drink some Red Bull, and back at it in 2 weeks hanging drywall, right?
Yeah.
And that adds to the socioeconomic issues that you talked
Exactly.
about. Yeah.
That pain doesn't go away.
Nope.
The healing didn't go away, right? But you're just scarfing it down and masking it with painkillers and Red Bulls, and eventually, guess what? You just become an old downbeat dog, right? Which I say a lot of construction workers, hey, we care about you. We don't want to see construction workers being greeters at 75 years old at Walmart because they chose to not organize.
Yeah.
They chose to not, understand or even take into consideration what education we're trying to teach them, that when you do organize, there's a level of power as well as benefits that come along with it. When you grow as a union, generally speaking, you're going to have better conditions, right? A lot better. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Right? So just to give an example, in our union, the contractors pay $8.50 every hour a union member works. If you work 2,000 hours, that's about $17,000 a year they're paying for you to have a full family paid. There's no premiums, right? And it's a Cadillac plan, so it's a zero deductible plan, right? And there's no percentage. So the way we work, we make it very simple for our carpenters. All you pay is a copay, right? So you go to the doctors, it's $15. Like, that's something that everyone should be like, oh my God, like you don't see that. It's one of the best medicals in the nation, right? People should be screaming to come through our doors, which I think a lot is changing now. So people they're like, oh my God, we've grown from about 200 members to close to 900.
Wow.
And a lot of the members it's a lot of hearsay, right? I mean, we do marketing, we put up some billboards, we put some wraps around the bus, Valley Ride and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they're talking and going, oh wow, Carpenter's Union, going home and talking to their spouse and saying, these are benefits, that great benefits, right?
I'm gonna tell you that your union dues are less than, I believe, my husband and I pay for our health insurance through his employer. I think that, yeah, I don't know what the exact number is, and it went up this year. And thankfully, his employer's based in Massachusetts, so we end up with, it's pretty reasonable by comparison to some of the premium spikes that we've seen over the last year. But I think your union dues are less, and we definitely do not have a $0 deductible.
Yeah.
That's like what breaks through that sort of fear or hesitation of, the foreman says, don't talk to that union person, right?
Right.
But then your families are getting together for a barbecue or whatever and talk about hey, actually, through the union,
Yeah.
we've had such tremendous benefit, and it breaks down that hesitation that has been been the first voice that people hear,
Yeah.
because a lot of the time the first message that we get as humans sticks in our brains, or something that says, oh, be careful of that, even if there's no logic behind it, it sticks in our brains.
Right.
So that's what the union is having to push through,
Yes.
and that breakthrough comes through things like healthcare.
Yeah.
Because I think nationwide too, we're experiencing a moment of we're looking at how that really is working for us
Yeah.
as Americans.
100%, and I think the struggle with the construction industry's organizers, we get a moment, right? We get an elevator speech. We're not on the job with these workers every day, right? So we may go on a job, talk to the worker for 5 minutes, give them some card we make for recruitment that has, we do these recruitment cards that explain our benefits with a QR code they may or may not put that in their lunchbox, maybe throw it away, whatever the case may be. We don't have access to them every day. We leave the job, and what they're hearing is from their foreman, right? And they're spewing lies, even if they can plausibly see something, right? They can go to our, website, they can call us, and we would be happy to show us our explanation of benefits, right? We have nothing to hide. There's no Kool-Aid that we're sugared water or Kool-Aid that we're feeding these workers, but it's this suppression, right? Because you are tied to your employer. They provide food for your family to eat, right? So at the end of the day, when you're bringing food to the table, even if that employer is just mediocre or decent, they nevertheless pay your check, right? So if you get an organizer to say, hey, the grass is greener over here, right? At the end of the day, it's hard to say, well, there's a big fear, right? And then of course all the tactics, right? Oh, the dues, they just want your dues. And it's you're absolutely right. The dues are a fraction of what you are actually paying.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
what do the dues get you long term?
So they get you all the benefits, they get you the representation, they get you a collective bargaining agreement. So what workers a lot of times don't understand is, of course, you have to, in order to function as a nonprofit labor organization that represents carpenters, you need a structure. And part of that structure is resources. Of course, unpaid staff, right? We have an office, we have an admin, right? We have legal department, we have contract admin, we have all these, it's a structured organization that has been doing it since 1881. We know what we're doing, right?
Yep.
We have a registered apprenticeship, we have all these things that have to be funded, right? But part of that, you have a collective bargaining agreement that protects you. So we bargain on your behalf. Like an example, I'll give you an example. Idaho doesn't have any overtime laws, right?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
So-
I think that's a big shock for a lot of people because we kind of take it for granted, oh, well, they'll pay overtime.
Yep.
But they're
don't
not
have to.
legally required to do so in the state of Idaho, and that's very important for people to know.
Especially within healthcare.
I've actually ran into some construction workers because generally speaking, the bigger contractors generally do it, even if they don't have to. But I've ran into some workers that were non-union that said, hey, I didn't get paid overtime, right? And of course, past practice was the contractor was, and of course they got it, they kind of slowed down, right? And they stopped doing it. And I go, well, if that's not a direct reflection of how they care about you, I mean, that should be, but also they don't have to. But they do in a union, right? So it's we have these protections where you know, depending on the shifts, it's contract language, but Saturday automatic is time and a half, Sunday, you work Sunday, it's double time.
Oh.
And the reason we write that in there is because we want our members to enjoy a weekend, right? But here's the thing, if you get in a bind and you're a contractor and, you know, construction can be very, very driven, like tight schedules, and they need you to work 7 days, then you're gonna pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're taking, the value is you're taking that person away from their family,
Yep.
right? And putting, and there should be a monetary value to that. And that's the biggest message I think that workers need to understand, is that the value that the contracts, the benefits, right, is that you are valued. And
Yeah.
you're currently not being, if you were valued, you would have the same things, and that's what we stand for when we're raising the standard, is in education. We have no problem if a contractor is to our standard. So currently our journeyman, total package, a journeyman for us makes $38.14, plus almost $16 an hour that the contractors pay, full family medical, into registered apprenticeship, training, and a pension, right? So the package is $54.07, right? So if you're paying $54.07 total package for a journeyman, we're good.
Yeah.
Problem is that's not happening, right? And workers don't get to see, the non-union workers, the challenge is they don't get to, what company shows you the monetary, what monetary spending they're having? Do they open their books and say, hey, you know what? We spend $2.50 an hour on you for a medical that's a $5,000 deductible, right? That's garbage, right?
Yeah.
So their total package, generally speaking, is gonna be significantly lower, right?
Yeah.
We see generally it's gonna be in the high 30s, if that, or low 30s, right? So that's the challenge, is a lot of times people don't see that value, and I'm saying you're significantly undervalued,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, and that's part of wage suppression across the board, right?
100%.
Is this avoiding union contracts and union workers allows them to basically set a standard that is substandard for a job that is, I grew up on a farm, I've built stuff. I'm gonna tell you, I am nowhere near a union labor carpenter skill set to build anything. And if I'm gonna have something built at my house, I wanna know that it's gonna be built right, so that I don't have to fix it or pay to have it fixed later. And so those are things that I always think of with unions, is there's a standardization practice for members, so that works out to the benefit of the contractor, it works out to the benefit ultimately of the consumer. And in some cases, like when we're talking government contracts, that works out into the benefit of the taxpayer overall. So I know that there's a couple of cases that you're working right now. Can you speak to one of those, like what's going on in the valley with some shady contractors?
oh yeah, 100%. You guys have probably seen some of the banners we have
Yeah,
around town. We have one on the BSU North End Zone project, as well as the YMCA. And the reason for those banners, it's a public awareness, right? It's not a picket. A lot of times people walk by and they say, you guys are picketing. We're not picketing. It's a banner. I just want to clarify that, because I think
Could
a
you
lot of
define
people-
picketing?
well, picketing would essentially state that we're out there with pickets and marching, right?
Yeah.
A
So not
banner
necessarily
can-
a strike.
Right,
Okay.
100%. So a picket would have to be mobile, so we educate our banner crews and let them know of all, you know, all these laws, right? Because we have to operate under these strict guidelines, right? So we make sure that everything's legit, right?
yeah,
And we have those up because we want the public essentially to know what's happening on these projects, right? Particularly, let's say the BSU North End Zone, that's a publicly funded project.
yeah, it is.
And in our process of boots on the ground investigating, we kind of knew this was gonna happen, just so, at the BSU student housing project, prior to this project, we got tipped off, and it was towards the end of the project that there was some cash pay happening. We interviewed some workers, got some pay stubs, and the contractor that was there was the same contractor that was awarded the scopes to do the steel studs and drywall on the BSU North End Zone. So they're essentially moving from the student housing to the BSU North End Zone. We knew there was a red flag,
Yeah.
right? They used this, and then we started getting onto them on different projects, right? And started realizing that they were using a labor broker. And we don't use that term lightly. It's an underground economy, and what it is essentially a registered contractor that misclassifies their workers as independent contractors in order to pay them cash evade tax. It's tax fraud, workers' comp fraud, payroll liabilities. They're essentially treating these workers like independent contractors. None of them are registered. The DOL and the IRS has clear definition as to what a worker and an independent contractor is, and they are not. But they are able to get these projects like BSU, the original first tier subcontractor that got awarded that project, was awarded it on our tax dollars because the state statute says it's low bid. But they knew that they were going to use a labor broker as a second tier sub to perform some of their work, and they're paying them, essentially getting paid cash. So when you get paid cash, then you're looking at 30% savings, right? So,
Yeah.
and these workers aren't paid very well, right? And they don't have any protections. And so what we stated is we went out, we tried to meet with the contractors, we made them aware of what was happening. Allegedly, they kicked this labor broker off. We don't really have confidence that they're still not operating on that project, and that's why we kept the banner off. Because this contractor is operating like this everywhere in the valley. And we've caught proof of it. We've actually extended and asked the contractor, hey, you know what? We reached out with an olive branch. We're happy to work with you guys. We will show you pay stubs, interviews we've had with workers, videos, I mean, all kinds of what we call receipts, right? The proof of this happening, right? No one has asked us to see this. We want to show them in person. It's a lot. It's dense. I mean, it's like if you're looking at an FBI war room, it looks pretty scary, right? There's lines everywhere, right? Because this underground economy is generally tied to other things, human trafficking, all kinds of stuff.
Well, I mean, it feels
right?
very much like a labor black market.
It's dirty.
Like it's whatever the dark web equivalent would be of hiring labor workers.
Yeah.
To do a job that is incredibly physically demanding and long hours. And I work outside in my day job as well, and I got to tell you, like there are definitely days and conditions where like the money needs to be where it needs to be to make that tolerable when it's 95 degrees or when it's 10 degrees below zero. And so when you're using these, there's no protection there, right?
No.
For the workers who are hired. And I know that with like when you're classified as a contractor or a freelance worker, you don't have a lot of your IRS taxes taken out during that paycheck, which means you need to be making that mental note for yourself. And it's a significantly higher tax rate for that type of labor than it is for organized W-2 labor.
Right.
So when we're talking about that, and then that's all of our tax dollars, right? So now the worker's getting screwed on the fact that their conditions and their wages are suppressed. And then they're also getting screwed on the fact that they're going to end up ultimately owing the IRS a lot more money.
Right. And the business owner generally, they're evading the taxes, right? And they're paying or liabilities.
Not having to pay like unemployment taxes and all of those things that go into ultimately
Social Security, right? So here's the thing is like a lot of people don't understand this, right? Because they're like, no one ever talks about this tax fraud.
Yeah.
And we have our international has a tax fraud page, and all you got to do is Google UBC tax fraud, and it'll take us to have a lot of articles on this. But essentially, it's like, if you think about it, you're paying taxes for this building to be built, and you're paying for it over and over again because they don't have any retirement. There's no Social Security getting paid. So most people don't understand when you treat someone as a legitimate employee. I think Social Security is roughly 6.7%. That comes out as a deduction by payroll liability, which is federal government states what legal deductions are, right? Unless it's, which are all that, taxes, Social Security, Medicare, as well as maybe some subpoena child support. There's a couple other things. But the employer always has to pay that as well, right? So how do you have a retirement when you have no Social Security? And you don't, right? So who's gonna pay for that in the future, right?
Yeah.
The worker, right? So you're just footing the bill. What it is pushing it back on the worker, right? And then here's the thing, when they don't even have, there's no kind of coverage, no workers' comp, they fall in that BSU project, they get hurt, they're gonna get fired on the spot, and then if they go to the doctor, medical's really expensive.
Oh,
if
yeah.
If you don't have insurance, you go to the doctor because you have to, right? You felt, oh, my back hurts, and next thing you know, it's a lot more serious than you think. You go in the emergency room, you get a $45,000 hospital bill. Does that work? Is that worker able to pay for it?
No.
Well, and they might have delayed their care and made the situation
100%.
worse because they knew how expensive it was gonna be.
100%.
Well, we've seen that across the board with people who don't have health insurance. It was one of the reasons that Idaho voted to expand Medicaid,
Yep.
is the people who were falling in that gap of too much money to be on Medicaid, but not enough money to afford health insurance, were ultimately costing, because the hospital has to eat that cost, that $45,000 emergency bill, they end up eating it. But you also find out that there's all these people who delay care, and then what was $45,000 at the emergency room is now like $100,000 because you've made the situation that much worse, which ultimately comes back on.
So I wanna,
Go ahead.
I wanted to look at this a little bit from the perspective of the contractors and employers.
Sure.
So, are there like union and non-union contractors? And like, how does that work with the union workers? Can they work for non-union contractors? Like, does right to work factor into that?
I would say that essentially all right to work states is that, and it's very misleading, right, is essentially just allows a union member the ability to not pay their dues. That's all it is, right? It's intended to cripple unions, right? Because if they're not funded, then how do we bargain on their behalf? How do we represent them if we don't have the ability to have the resources to, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, 100% of our members are dues paying members. I think that our members, we do a good job at educating them and them understanding that the value that comes with representation, right? And so your question, I think, well, your first question was if union members could go work for non-union contractors?
Yeah, that's part of it,
Okay, so, I mean, it's free market, right? So they can go work for whatever they want. Now, it's in our constitution that if a Carpenter union member is working and supporting a non-union outfit that is essentially degrading the market, that non-union contractor is not working to elevate the standards that our contractors are working to do, then we can actually file charges on that member or another member, which I can file charges as a dues paying member. Essentially, of course, we would go up to them and say, hey, you're supporting the degradation of the industry, right?
Yeah.
Because that contractor is not paying $54 an hour every hour you work to value you, to train you, to have full family medical, to have a pension that you can retire with dignity and a livable wage, right? So now, at the end of the day, those non-union companies, if those workers want to be union, they have other options. They can come into the union and work for some of our signatory contractors, or they can organize, right?
Absolutely.
Which a lot of workers don't understand under the National Labor Relations Act. You can organize your contractor, which I'd like to see more workers understand.
Yes.
That, hey man, take that pizza party, right? Eat that pizza, right? And get some benefits with it too, because your benefits are probably nowhere near where they should be, right?
So what does it mean to be a union or non-union business or contractor?
Okay, so a union contractor, what I always say is, I break it down very simple, right? You got, and if you look at, science, there's a lot of animals that have symbiotic relationships, right? Like, you see maybe a whale that has some little fish that swim around it and they eat the bacteria in their mouth or whatever, they keep them healthy, right? Same thing with the union, right? Our contractors are members, and the union, we're almost a bridge, right? It's a symbiotic relationship. Our contractors choose, they're private businesses, they choose to sign with the Carpenters Union because they understand that relationship, that we're gonna provide skilled labor, trained labor, right? And also manage these funds, because it's unions are multi-employer pension and health and welfare plans, which are governed by the federal government. We have to have essentially a trust that manages those funds, and we do a damn good job at managing that, right? I would venture to say $8.50 contribution to a full family Cadillac plan, where for us the highest you pay our copay is $500. That's for a hospitalization or have a baby, right?
Wow.
We have members that have had $120,000 surgeries and have paid $500. And if you go home that day,
For the record, I would just like to state it costs an average of $30,000 to have a baby, and that's if
That's a good
everything
birth. That's a good
goes
birth.
textbook.
Right.
So,
My,
100%, right? So our
Yeah.
contractors, on the flip side, we talked about all the socio-economic issues that come along with not having these benefits, right?
Yeah.
Our contractors know that because they're paying this, you're gonna have retention, right?
yeah,
I guarantee you, if you give someone good wages and really good benefits, I would say our members' wives are probably our biggest asset.
yeah,
Because I guarantee you, their wives are like, you're not gonna go work for that non-union contractor if it gets slow. You better go hustle work with another union contractor you have because you have kids. And it would be actually very selfish of you to like say, I'm gonna leave this Cadillac plan, and that's literally a Cadillac plan. I speak highly of it because it is. I haven't even got into the pension. The pensions, if I give you the pension, you're probably gonna blow your mind.
I mean, but it's this idea, yes, like the people at home that you're supporting, and I was thinking about that as you were talking about, like, well, I was 25 and I was young and I thought I was invincible, and I was like, okay, but if you are someone who does have a family at home, I mean, one sick kid can be a real change in your priorities. You know, it's like you might be Superman, but is your kid? Is your kid Superman? You know, are they going to be okay when they, you know, if they get sick or your wife gets sick and develops some sort of complications? And so making sure that those benefits are squared up is good. And then from the employer side, being able to say like, yeah, my guys are going to do the job. They're going to do it really well. Because they know what they're doing, and I've been working with these guys for a while, and I can't say that, like, from a business perspective, one of the most expensive things business can do is hire new labor.
On average, $10,000 to $15,000 per new employee.
Yeah, because it costs a lot of time and money and energy to train these people to make sure that they know what's going on, versus if you've got a crew of guys that you've been working with for 6 years, you know they're all super well paid, they all know their job, you know exactly what they're gonna do, that saves money, which in the case of like a BSU contract, which is being funded by our tax dollars coming from the American public, that ultimately saves us money.
Yeah.
Because now we're just like, yeah, it's gonna be one and done, and they're gonna get it done on time. You know, it's not gonna be an extended, drawn-out process, which I have seen all over the valley, because apparently we can build a Starbucks in 2 weeks, but it takes like 6 years to fix one intersection.
Yeah, 100%. And a perfect example is a banner we had on the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, which was utilizing the same contractor, utilizing those same business practices, right? So they're using labor brokers, which aside from the cash pay and the DOL, you know, them evading their payroll liabilities, which is against the law, they're not even that, if you're a labor broker, they're not licensed public works contractors. So they're not even supposed to be on that job. Right?
Like especially a job that is quite clearly taxpayer funded.
Yeah.
You know, Canyon County Sheriff, that's 100%. All of that money is coming straight out of our pockets. There's no donations, there's no grants, there's nothing like that. And so
that was paid for, I think, by the COVID funds, right?
Yeah.
So it's a $27 million project. There's a lot of money in there, and unfortunately, what we stand for is like, where's the vetting process? How do you guys allow someone, like, did you even look if that contractor had, I mean, you know, we went in there and we have this all on record, is, you know, we went in there with an olive branch and said, hey, are you aware that Summit Wall Systems, and I'll go ahead and throw the contractor out there, we have proof of this, is utilizing a second tier subcontractor that is an unlicensed public works contractor. And they kicked the first one off. Well, we were having an issue because now we found out that there's a different labor broker out there.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna take our foot off the gas. I always say, you know, a lot of times that those non-union contractors are gonna try to pin on their workforce. They're gonna label us as thugs, the unions, right? But at the end of the day, the problem is the predatory practices. Let's make that clear. The exploitation of workers, right?
Yeah.
And to get back to your question that you stated earlier about the non-union versus union, and that union contractors, the symbiotic relationship, the difference really is the non-union contractors, they can pay that. They choose not to.
Because they want to increase their profit margin.
They choose not to, right? And at the end of the day, you know, they're probably gonna lose margins because of the efficiency and the lack of skilled work, but they're just lining their pockets more.
Yeah.
They can choose to partner with labor organizations like the Carpenter Union that is gonna work together. We work with our contractors. We're not out there trying to strong arm our contractors, put them in a headlock. We need them to be successful. We are, as a private sector union, believe it or not, and we're for the free market. We understand construction needs money, right? Like,
Yeah.
we, like, okay, we like this competition, but it has to be ethical, right? And we want growth, we want spending, because hey, when you grow, you need carpenters to build those buildings. The difference is we want ethical, right?
You want competitive practices, not corner cutting practices.
Exactly. And so what we're talking about here with these public workshop and the awareness, we're never gonna stand for people cheating, right?
Yeah.
We would be okay with a contractor that was non-union getting the job if they were actually a legitimate contractor, but that's not even the case.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and that seems especially shady when we're talking about the sheriff's department.
100%.
Because shouldn't they be on the absolute up and up with the legalities of all of it?
I mean, yeah.
By virtue of their law enforcement position, but also by virtue of the fact that they're responsible for spending taxpayer money
Right.
and paying and using it ethically.
Well, it's crazy to me if you think about it, right? Serve and protect.
Mhm.
We're
Right.
building Canyon County Sheriff's Office. Serve and protect. That
Protect.
job is not protecting. And we're all consumers here, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So like I said, maybe some level of our tax dollars came from federal, right? That's funding from, like I said, a lot of it came from COVID funds. We can't be okay with that, right?
No.
And it's like, it's just sad that you have a building. I mean, that's like the extreme version of a lot of the things that we've seen in this market. This is not the first time, and it won't be the last, right?
No.
But our job as a carpenters union is to make sure that people are aware and hopefully put pressure and say, this is bullshit. Pardon my language, but it's bullshit. Why is my tax dollars going to a sheriff's office that is not serving my best interest?
Yeah.
That contractors are breaking the law. You're supposed to serve and protect. Now, I understand, like, a lot of times I think in Idaho, you know, you got the BSUs and these what we call the end users, the owners, you know, it's deniable plausibility, right?
Yeah.
They put their hands up and go, oh, wait a second, there's a state statute. Oh, wait a second, there's a general contractor that's responsible. And then general contractor goes, oh, wait a second, we vetted the contractor. We weren't aware until you guys brought to our attention that there was cash pay and labor brokers and unlicensed public works contractors on the job. Are you kidding me? You don't think that the contractor, knows they don't know who's on their job?
Yeah.
OSHA states, by law, you have to have some kind of reporting mechanism, some sign-in sheet, because if there's an issue on the job, you have to account for everybody.
Yeah.
So where's your sign-in sheet? Show us, right? You got nothing to hide. And we say this when we go on jobs. A lot of times they don't want to let us walk on jobs, and it's like, why?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
That seems pretty shady to me. If you don't want an organizer, we won't talk to your workers. We're not out here to strip your workers. We're out here to make sure that you're doing the job ethically and right, and you're not using these tax fraud, cheating, predatory, criminal contractors, right?
Yeah.
And so, which now, in Canyon County, they won't allow us to walk the job, right? But, be as it will, we have proof, sign-in sheets of labor brokers on the job,
Yeah.
right? So we would hope that the state, that the enforcing agencies actually do something about it.
What are
Right.
those agencies?
So there's several. So DOPL, Department of Professional Licenses, Public Works Department, they actually have the ability under state statute Title 54, 1902. It is unlawful for a contractor to act as a public works contractor. It is actually a misdemeanor, right? And I believe it's conserve up to a year and $5,000 fine. Now, I believe that they only have the ability to strip the license. It has to go to like attorneys general or some prosecutor that would actually take the case, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what I always say is if you're a contractor like Summit Wall Systems and you're utilizing a labor broker, a second tier subcontractor, you are culpable, right?
Right.
You are knowingly using a second tier subcontract on numerous projects that are tax funded, right? And here's the thing. We sent them a notice of labor dispute. We already knew. We have plenty of evidence. We have plenty of pay stubs. We have plenty of interviews, plenty of videos, which we wanted to show. No one wanted to see it. But we also have a letterhead from the company actually stating, yeah, we sent them a notice of labor dispute. This is how before we do a banner, we essentially legally will say, hey, we have a dispute. We have a dispute with this contractor for utilizing Summit Wall Systems for utilizing this tax fraud second tier contractor on your projects, and we send it to the projects that we have had a banner on, right? Mm-hmm. And it gives us the ability to essentially cover our ass. We notified you, right? No response, right? We had a response actually from the YMCA, which we generated a meeting. The other two, there was verbal. On the BSU, there was email communication, but no sit down response, right?
Sounds all right.
The response from Summit Wall Systems was on their letterhead, hey, yeah, we are using this company. And I don't understand why your labor dispute is with us, because, you know, from time to time, we do use them as a labor service, right? And your dispute should be with them. And we're like, hold on one second, you guys actually wrote this down? Do you realize that they're not even a public works licensed contractor?
Yeah.
So they were omitting on letterhead, which we already knew. It was just kind of like, oh my God, this is crazy. And that by that virtue, that was the only reason the general contractor at BSU acted and said, holy crap, because we said, you know, in an email, oh my God, you guys sent us this email. Anderson Construction sent us this email that they provided from their subcontractor stating that, yeah, they're using this contractor. Are you kidding me? You guys are the general contractor. Did you like even verify that contractor that they stated on their letter that's working on your project was a public works license? Like, what kind of incompetency is that? That is crazy. It says deniable plausibility.
Well, and cutting corners.
So
It's like, what are you doing? Like, how long have you been in this construction industry? Right?
Yeah, that seems a little bit like a rookie mistake.
Yep.
So I've got a couple final questions.
Sure.
At one point, we had talked about right to work.
Yep.
And you had mentioned how that is kind of a misnomer of sorts.
Yes.
Could you explain what right to work actually means in the state of Idaho?
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, right to work to me is just, it's the start, and we always tell our members this when we talk about politics and getting involved. Right to work started, I want to say it was like 1986. Well, not too long after that, prevailing wage. I think it was 1990, right? So it's just the start of a culture change, a degradation of labor laws, right?
But what does it mean for the workers?
So for the workers, essentially, all right to work means essentially is you have the right to go work for a union and not pay dues. That's it. So it's defunding. Mm-hmm. Ideally, the way I make it, my kids, they laugh at me because I have stupid analogies, I call them, right? It's just to simplify and so thoughts can be understood in a very simplistic manner, right? And it'd be like almost if the legislator made this bill because a bunch of homeowners go and buy properties in an HOA and they're irate, right? They're like, oh my God, my beautiful subdivision has a pool, but I hate that I gotta pay HOA. I hate it. I don't like the HOA. And then they go to the legislators, they lobby them, and they say, hey, I want a right to live bill. What do you mean right to live? Well, I want to live wherever I want, but I don't want to pay HOA fees, right? Although you enjoy the pool, although you enjoy the basketball courts, you enjoy the pickleball courts that are paid for with these HOA dues, right? It would be something along that line. So you get to freeload, right, which should be actually anti-conservative, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't like freeloaders, right? It's a freeload bill, right? So it's essentially a freeload law saying that you can go work for the union, but you don't have to pay to work. You don't have to pay dues, so it's defunding. There's no laws out there that cripple businesses, right? Why is it because you're a labor organization that you're going to cripple that labor organization so they can't represent their workers. It's tactical, right? It's
well,
intended to
it's
essentially.
not, we are not anti-union, we're just telling people,
Yeah.
we're just cutting their Achilles tendon, basically.
It also allows companies within Idaho to fire people without any cause.
Right.
Yep.
So you have a right to work anywhere, and any company has a right to not have you work for them effectively.
Yeah, based on whatever they want.
And you
Yeah, what
already
if
have-
you're not in unions?
You already have a right to work.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
not my check.
Which is,
This is a free market.
Yeah.
If I don't have to work for the union if I don't want to. That's
Yeah.
my choice.
yep,
Right? Everyone has a choice in life. Last time I checked, I do not strong arm any of our members and say, you know what, you have to work for us. No, it's their choice. They come through our doors because of all those things we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
the benefits. They see the benefit, right? If you don't see the benefit, you don't want to be union, great. Go work for peanuts for your
Yeah, go
non-union
make less money
contractor.
and have less benefits.
Right, go do that. That's great, right? You go do that. Eventually you're probably gonna, at some point or another, you're gonna get hurt and you're gonna have a hospital bill and you're gonna be like, God dang it, I wish I wouldn't have done it when I was 50. But that's your choice. That's your right, right? But that's what right to work essentially is. But I think most importantly, what a lot of people don't understand is all the other labor laws that come with it. It's just, to me, it's just a culture. Like, we don't have a state prevailing wage.
Nope.
Right?
A state
we
what?
have,
Prevailing wage.
I don't even know what that is.
So at this BSU project, at the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, a lot of states have laws in regards to a publicly funded project, right? When there's taxpayer funds from the state of Idaho that fund a project, there's rules in regards to what that wage looks like, having certified payroll, right?
so it's like a minimum
protection.
wage for tax-funded projects.
100%.
Got it. Okay.
Which most of the time in most states, a lot of states like Washington, I believe Oregon, they have, their laws are pretty progressive and they say, hey, if there's a collective bargaining agreement in a county, that which is for the carpentry union, let's say there's a collective bargaining agreement in some county in Oregon, that will prevail, right?
Yeah.
So they don't even survey, because the surveys come from the DOL when they do these they determine the wages and the benefits. Generally speaking, the way it works in most states is the DOL will send out surveys to all the contractors that do a certain scope of work. So they'll send a survey to all the electrical contractors, right? And so electricians working on a public funded job will have all the contractors will have a survey. Those contractors fill out the survey on what they pay their wages and benefits, and that becomes what the wage and benefits are, right? Generally speaking, in states that have good laws, like Washington, they have the unions, they just say, why are we gonna waste processes, right? Let's just pass a bill where there's a bargaining agreement that prevails, right?
Yeah.
Which elevates the standard for all workers. I've talked to so many carpenters that have worked for a local contractor and they go, oh man, I wanna work in Oregon and my contractor paid me $70 an hour. And you're like, oh, do you know why they did that? Thanks to the unions, because we advocate for these bills, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to raise the standard, right? So
Yeah.
if a non-union contractor gets what we stand for, a prevailing wage job, then they have to pay what we call as a total package, right? So generally speaking, you say, why would the union be for this, right? Because a non-union worker on a prevailing wage job is going to make more money. Because what they have to do is they have to pay the total of the wages and benefits. And they can subtract, a non-union contractor can subtract the difference in what they pay their benefits, right? So let's say, for example, a carpenter makes $70 an hour in Oregon, and a non-union total with their wages and benefits. If a non-union contractor goes out there and works on a prevailing wage job, they have to pay every worker $70 an hour per hour worked. Now, if the wage is $50 an hour, the benefits are $20, they're paying $50 an hour, the contractor gets to deduct, let's say their benefit package is $5 an hour. So then they get to deduct the 5 from the 70, they have to add everything else on wages. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get non-union workers that have worked out of state from an Idaho contractor and they go, oh man, my contractor was great to me. And I go, they weren't because they wanted to. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, the workers don't understand these laws, so they'll misclassify them on these projects as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll pay them as a laborer, although they're a carpenter, because that scales less. Or they won't add it on the benefit, or they'll cook their books because they're a certified payroll. They have to actually report it to the government. So prevailing wage is protections on those jobs for taxpayer dollars, right? So a good remedy that the Carpenters Union has been trying to push and talk about is, hey, if the very least, if there was certified payroll in these tax-funded jobs, it would be a protection for the consumer. Because the very least that would happen, I mean, having a wage requirement, that's kind of shooting for the moon. But certified payroll would at least ideally protect, it would protect the consumer knowing that there's not going to be a labor broker, or shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to report the payroll liabilities for every worker. As of right now, that is not a requirement under the state statute, right? And that's how this is happening, right? So laws impact workers, and we always tell our members that, right? Is when you're voting, vote for your pocketbook. Jobs, wages, benefits.
That's
That's not just selfish for you though, that's like good for your whole community.
100%.
Well, because if workers are paid higher wages, that's more money that gets to circulate back into the economy, right? That goes into local businesses, local restaurants.
Healthy middle class.
Healthy middle class, and elevates everyone.
Most importantly, to get back to the prevailing wage, just real quick, is I think that when unions fight for this, it's to make it an even playing field.
Yeah.
So what we stand for is if a non-union contractor gets it, hey, we'll be okay with it, and that's all we fight for, is like, maybe those workers aren't getting the $0 deductible Cadillac plan that the union members are getting, but they get to add that on their check. So when they're a contractor that doesn't pay very much in the benefits, at least they're making such good money that it kind of helps offset it, but it also allows ethical union contractors to bid that work.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes it a level playing field, and that's what we stand for. It's a standard, right? And right to work, and you know, I call it for what it is, our conservative culture and environment. We've been a supermajority for how long?
Too long.
We have over 70% of our members are conservative. And not to bash our conservative Idaho culture, but at the end of the day, I call it what it is.
Yeah.
They did this.
Yeah.
Right? We get members moving from California and they say, oh my God, I moved from what I felt was an extreme opposite to what the hell's going on? You mean you have no prevailing wage in Idaho? You mean the bridges are done non-union? You mean the hospitals are done non-union? You mean that the schools are done non-union? Yeah, and there's also labor brokers on them. And they're like, oh my God, this is like crazy to me, right?
Yeah.
Because they have protection in their states. Mind you, don't bring up these states in this in this political environment, because then you're viewed as a socialist, right? But ideally, it's like we're losing out on taxpayer funds. We're not encouraging local people on these, local workers on these projects.
Yeah.
And ethical contracting, right? And it's getting the bill, once again, is getting footed by the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So, would you recommend that workers in other types of work try to create unions? And if they should, how would they do that?
So 100%, it's in our Constitution, right? When a carpenter swears in, they swear to support union first and where union can be had. So if union can't be had, let's say there's no local union print shop here, then you try American first, right? So union first and then American, right? And so we always feel that every worker should have, and we tell our members this, you should promote unions to anyone, because a rising tide raises all boats, right? So at the end of the day, if you're a community member, and we talked about community wealth earlier, right? Building community wealth, it's in your best interest to ensure that your neighbor is getting taken care of. As benefits, as a retirement, because we don't want to keep footing the bill that the government's, hey, school levies, school bonds, all these things just keep getting passed to the Idaho taxpayer, right? And people should be tired of that. And like I said earlier in the podcast, is at the end of the day, when workers organize, then it creates less government, right? So how workers organize, how do they get there? Well, it's under National Labor Relations Act, right? So every worker has concerted efforts, right? That means that they have the ability to talk union on their free time, right? They have ability to wear union logos on the job. They have ability to talk about their wages, which is crazy to me in Idaho because everyone's so scared about talking about their wage.
And
I'm
they
like,
are.
let's talk about it, right?
And there's no law against that, like, just so
Well,
everybody knows.
that's a federal law,
Yeah.
right? You can talk about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
why don't, it's like this underlying, like,
It's taboo.
like, oh no, you just don't do that. I'm like, but you know, when you do that, you find out that you're getting royally screwed, right?
Well, that's why employers don't want people to talk about their
Well,
wages.
100%.
Yeah.
Look at Starbucks or healthcare, for that matter. I did in-home healthcare for years, and I watched people get fired at hours after they hurt themselves at work.
Yeah.
Get fired, and there was no recourse because we didn't have unions, and we live in frickin' Idaho.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a federal law, and that's what I tell workers a lot of times. You know, workers don't understand this. It's like your right to organize is federally protected. Your right to talk about. Now, here's the thing: is I always narrate it because at the end of the day, when workers are organizing, I say the law protects you, right? Should they do this? Can they do this? They're not supposed to. Will they do it? Probably, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of along the lines, right? Like there's a law, a seatbelt law, right? If you don't wear your seatbelt, you get a ticket. I don't know what that ticket is, right?
Yeah.
Do people not wear their seatbelt? Yeah, right? Like it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will you get a ticket? I don't know, right? Like so the National Labor Relations Act protects your concerted efforts and your rights to organize. And I say the employer is not supposed to tell you that you can't have a union sticker on your hard hat.
Yeah.
The employer is not supposed to tell you that you can't meet with your workers after work and talk about organizing.
Over pizza and beer.
But will they do it? They will do it.
Yeah.
They will break the law because it's in their best interest to suppress these workers, right? It's their bottom line that's heavily impacted, right? And when
Absolutely.
you know, when these greedy pigs have been lining their pockets, I mean, for years and years,
Yeah.
And
it's
they're
kind
used to
of
cutting
it's kind of
corners.
hard.
Well,
It's
that
kind of
might be
hard to
cool.
say, hey, let's take a little bit of that and pull it out of your pocket and give it back. And it's not really about the money. It's more about the power. I think a lot of times corporations and businesses are more afraid of movements and workers' power because they know what comes along with that. When you organize and you create a society of a middle class that's equitable for everyone, well, now you're empowering people, right? So what comes next, right? You know, they always paint unions as socialists, right? And at the end of the day, I tell members, well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
What's wrong with advocating for healthcare for all? Like, what's wrong with that, right? What's wrong with having healthcare? What's wrong with people, like, having retirement and retiring with dignity? Like,
Well,
it's not
especially-
a bad thing. Wouldn't it be great to have, like France, I believe, has like 7-hour days. They have like a 35-hour work week.
Yep.
They have
Because they have like 2-hour lunches.
100%.
Yeah.
They have mandated vacation. So the moment you start working, you automatically get vacation. I mean, a lot of people in France are enjoying 3 weeks, a month. Everybody.
A year.
So it's not just some people, right? It's everybody. Now, is
And
that
they
going to
get
happen?
like a year of someone coming to take care of them and their babies.
100%. Now, what does that create, right? That creates what we talked about earlier. A healthy, that mental health, anxiety, all that stuff. I mean, not to say that it completely stops that, but it definitely alleviates that. And that's not going to happen here, and I'm not promoting that here, but what I am saying is that unions in America are that bridge, right? They're that bridge to that social gap to create a middle class, to elevate the working poor to the middle class, and corporations are afraid of that because any economist will tell you that when you hand out more money, there's only so much money you can hoard.
Yeah.
When you start giving that back to the workers, well, then you start creating more infrastructure and that money starts rolling back, right? Oh man, if all workers were middle class, imagine a world where every worker could go to Paris or could go to Australia. Now you're spending money on travel
American
agencies.
dream.
The American dream. And it's getting circulated back to all these corporations. I mean, the unionism should fall right into capitalism.
It really should.
100% if you think about it,
If you
right?
have unions across multiple industries,
100%.
it's healthy competition. It's
Yeah.
not like we're saying like, oh, there has to be one government and we're gonna call it a union and
Right.
everybody has to like follow. And unions are somewhat democratic, right?
Right.
As well.
Well,
There's elections and things within them.
exactly, 100%. There's a structure. There's a structure, right? We have a president, we have a vice president. We're a nonprofit labor organization, so every penny has to be accounted for, right? Our members run our local, right? We have trustees that review our books. We have a financial secretary. We have members that are essentially running the local. And by law, there's governance to that, right? We're almost essentially like, if you think about it, you come to union meetings, we have once a month, like these are laws we have to follow, right? And we're structured no different than we follow Robert's rules, no different than a city council meeting, right? Our members get to vote on the monetary things that we elect to do. You know, we just had, I think, a $10,000 order not too long ago for some swag. Our members were like, we want swag. You're like, all right, let's make a motion, right? What does that look like, right? And so, and I'm the financial secretary, so I also, in discussion, I always try to guide and say, hey, guys, let's get the report, right? But at the end of the day, the members have the right to make motions, to control that money, to run their local. It gives them an empowerment, and yes, it is a structure, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not terribly different from how we operate with the Idaho 5051. Is we have a structure and a leadership, and everything's elected and voted upon, and we try our best to always make sure that we are collectively moving in the same direction. So yeah, we get it, and we're very obviously pro-union here.
Yeah.
Last Labor Day, we held a massive protest on the Capitol steps here in Boise, and then we immediately left that, shut that down, closed it all up, and a bunch of us went over to the Labor Day picnic being put on by the AFL-CIO.
Perfect.
Which was fantastic.
And, which was awesome. We had a great time. The food was amazing. They even had vegetarian burgers. I was so excited. But okay, Gil, I think that is all we've got time for today.
Perfect.
But it was fascinating talking to you, and we hope you will come back.
Anytime.
I'm very curious to follow up with the YMCA and the BSU and the Canyon County Sheriff's Department and where those cases end up going
100%.
in terms
And
of
I didn't
getting.
even get to ask about the wildest non-union approved things you've seen on sites.
Yeah,
I
because
want
we
to
would
know
definitely
crazy
like to hear
stories.
some tea.
We want the tea, not today, but we want the tea.
I'll try to censor it next time we talk, because we do see some pretty wild things.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys want to hear or see more of us, you can follow us on socials with Idaho 5051 and the Idaho Vanguard. If you subscribe to the Substack, you get email notifications. And being a paid subscriber helps us keep going because none of the work we do here at Idaho Vanguard or with Idaho 5051 is paid, no matter what Fox News tells you. If you want to get more involved in protecting our democracy, you can find more information at idaho5051.com. We cannot protect the Founding Fathers' dream of a more perfect union alone. We must do it together. Remember to reach out to your communities and keep the lives of families destroyed by ICE in your thoughts as we battle the scourge creeping fascism side by side. Stay informed, Guardians. We'll see you out there.
Thanks again, Gil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on.
Sorry if I did not